Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Multiple Careers Podcast. Finally, a new episode. I know that it's been a while. It's been 1 or 2 months since I've uploaded my last podcast episode, and the reason is basically because I've been working really hard on writing my book, a book that I will hopefully launch in 2023, which will be on the topic of multiple careers, but more about that later. Anyways, in this episode today, I want to talk about whether or not it is a good idea for you specifically, to pursue multiple careers. In other words, should or should you not pursue a second or even a third career on top of the career that you are already pursuing? And I am going to answer this question in 5 parts. And actually, it's a kind of a checklist that I put together for you, which consists of 5 things that you might want to consider when making this difficult decision of whether or not you should pursue multiple careers instead of just sticking to one career. And let me guess, the reason that you clicked on this episode might be that you are in one of these 2 situations. And let me know in the comments which one applies to you specifically. So the first one might be that you are already pursuing a career right now, and you might even like it, you enjoy it, you're quite happy in it, but you just feel that something is missing. You just feel that doing this one thing that you're pursuing, let's say you're a software engineer or a graphic designer or a writer or whatever, you just feel that it's not enough. You just feel that you have this creativity inside of you, have this desire inside of you to pursue something else. You just feel like you want to do more than just this. And because of that, maybe for a while you've been considering to pursue a second career. Perhaps you're not just interested in software engineering, but you also want to play the guitar professionally and not just as a hobby. But perhaps you are doubting this choice. You're not really sure of whether or not this would be the right decision for you. And I completely understand. And the reason might be that all your life you've been told by your parents and by other people that the right thing to do is, after college, after university, pick a career, possibly a career that aligns with whatever you studied in college, whether or not you really liked it or whether or not you're interested in it. But just for the sake of it, for the sake of continuity even, just pick a career that is connected to your major and stick to that. Just pursue that. Continue pursuing that for your entire life until retirement, or whatever happens, right? And because you've been so used to that way of thinking, you're perhaps doubting this desire you have to pursue another career, a second career, or even change careers. And that is something that I will address in these 5 things, this checklist that I'm going to talk about today. So that is one situation. But you might also be in another situation, and again, tell me in the comments if this applies to you. You might already be pursuing multiple careers right now. Perhaps you've just started your second career, or you've just started your third career. And in the beginning, in the first, let's say 1 to 2 years, usually that's a time where you encounter a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties. And again, you start doubting yourself. You start thinking, is this really the best way? Is this the best path for me? Or should I just forget it? Should I just forget it and stick to that one career and just 100% focus on that? And I completely understand that as well, because I've been through it myself. The minute I started pursuing a second career on top of what I was already doing, there were so many instances where I felt this big doubt whether or not I was doing the right thing. And that is also actually what got me into thinking about the reasons why people pursue multiple careers at all. Why would they do that to themselves, right? And after some time, after a lot of thinking, I discovered a few central things, these 5 things that I will talk about, that might make it a good idea, and that might make it a good idea for you to pursue multiple careers. And just to summarize them before I get into all of the details, these 5 things have to do with your interest, with the talent that you have and your past activities, or more precisely, your past parallel activities, your personality, and also your need for diversification. Now, let's get into all of these one by one. And the first thing is about your interest. There are certain people who are only interested in pursuing one thing for their entire life. Let's just say there's a researcher who is interested in finding a cure for a certain type of cancer, and he's decided that he just wants to dedicate his whole life to this one single thing. And for some people, that can be a good idea. After all, there are many things, for example, like finding a cure to cancer, that requires a lifelong dedication to it until you actually find the answer, right? But the thing is just that it's not for everyone, and perhaps it's also not for you. You might be one of those people who have more than one interest that you want to pursue professionally. And here I stress professionally. Why? Because you can have many interests. You can have 10 or 20 interests. Like I myself am interested, not just interested here in interior design, in film, in cooking, in fashion, in makeup, in philosophy, psychology. There are so many things I'm interested in, and I guess so are you. But it doesn't mean that we want to make everything that we're interested in or even passionate about into a career, right? You can be passionate about 20 things, but it doesn't mean that you want to turn everything into a career, right? So the important differentiation here is whether or not you have interests that you actually want to pursue professionally or just want to pursue as a hobby. For example, you're interested in cooking and you like to do it during your spare time and you enjoy it. It provides you relaxation. It's fun to do it, to cook with your family, but you would never think about pursuing cooking or culinary arts as a profession, as a career. So that's something that you really need to figure out. If you have these many interests, do you want to actually pursue these just as a hobby, just for fun, without any sort of pressure, or do you want to make it into a career and pursue it professionally? And the point of pursuing something professionally is that you constantly get better at it. And also, in my opinion, what makes a career is that it eventually involves other people, directly or indirectly. So this is what I mean. If, for example, you have a hobby of gardening, let's say, you do gardening in your spare time, and probably you only do it for yourself. You find it fun to do gardening and see the plants and vegetables and fruit grow, and you derive pleasure from harvesting the fruits, and you just like tending to that garden of yours, but it's nothing that you really want to share with the outside world, so it's something that you just do privately, right? Whereas if you were to do gardening professionally, then you would eventually want to provide a service to someone else, or a product, or perhaps the knowledge about how to do gardening, and so on. So that's something that you need to differentiate. But if in the end you find that, okay, I have more than one interest, I actually have these two central interests that I really want to pursue professionally as a career and not just as a hobby. If you identify that and you think that that's really true, then you, I think, are a good candidate to pursue multiple careers. Because if you're really strongly interested in something and you really want to do it professionally, then there's no other way than to pursue it as a second career. Because if you just leave it at that and you forget all about that, I believe at least that one day when you're older, in your 50s or 60s, you will look back on it and you will experience some kind of regret. You might think that all this while I was so interested in this and I actually really wanted to pursue it as a career, but just because I thought that the right thing to do is to stick to one career, I just forgot all about it and I didn't do anything about it. So let me give you one example, and this is based on a true story. I have a friend, or let's say an acquaintance, who is a doctor, a medical doctor. So he pursues that as a career, but he also pursues photography as a career. So photography is not just a hobby that he does in his spare time, but he actually does professional photography for weddings, for pre-wedding photography, and so on. And he really puts his heart and soul into both of these professions. And I know it might sound crazy, right? How can you pursue a career as a medical doctor and also as a photographer? It sounds impossible. But anyways, in this episode, I don't want to get into the details about about how you can manage and balance multiple careers, but more about whether or not it's a good idea for you to do it or not. So that's about interest. Pretty easy, right? Now let's go on to talent, and this can be a bit tricky. So if you only had one talent, let's say that you're a really good sprinter, an athlete, right? And at a very young age, you found out that you are faster than all of your other classmates, and you're really meant to be a sprinter and compete professionally. And apart from that, you've not really identified anything else that you think you're really good at. Maybe you're just so at writing. You're not necessarily a great actor. You're not a great cook. You're not really good at mathematics and so on. But you're really good at sprinting, at athletics. In that case, it's quite easy to identify what a suitable career for you might be, right? You just go ahead and pursue your career as an athlete. But what if you had more than one talent that is quite strong? So let's say, for example, that you are very good at programming, at coding, but you are also very good at drawing cartoons. What do you do about that, right? I mean, if you're very good at both of these things, but you only pursue one thing, you only pursue programming, for example, then you could say that somehow this talent of yours, this talent of drawing cartoons, that would go to waste. If you never pursued it in your entire life, then it might also be something that you might regret, because you know that you are really good at this thing, and you know that the world would benefit from it. Other people would be happy looking at your drawings, would feel entertained. But because you only pursued one career, other people never got to know this talent of yours. So that is something that you need to consider. But of course, to be able to do that, first of all, you need to be very honest to yourself about your talents, and that's not a very easy thing to do. And sometimes other people might be able to point that out better to you than you yourself, because you're so much in your own head. You might not really be aware of that other talent that you have. Let's say that you are a researcher, but you're actually also very good at public speaking, but you're not really aware of that yourself. You think that, oh, I'm a lousy speaker, I suck at speaking. But there might be other people or colleagues who have heard you give a speech in the past, and they would be able to point out to you that you are excellent at speaking. You're a really great speaker and you should continue doing it. So sometimes it's really useful to listen to other people, what they have to say about you and your talents. But it can also go the other way around. For example, you think that you are really brilliant at playing the guitar, but actually you suck. So what I'm saying is, it's not very easy to identify what your talents are unless your talents are at the very extreme. I mean, if you're extremely good, then everyone would have pointed that out by the time you are 3 years old or 5 years old. Or if you really suck at something, at music, for example, then I guess you would also know that by the time you're, I don't know, 10 at the latest, let's say, right? But if you're anywhere in the middle and not at the extremes, then it can be tricky to find out. But let's just say that you already know your talents, that you're pretty clear about what you're good at, and there are 2 or 3 talents. In that case, you might really want to consider whether or not you want to pursue a second or third career. And also something that's really important to mention in relation to this is that this is especially the case, is especially important to consider if these different talents are not connected to one another. So let's say you are a talented actor, you are talented at performing, and you are also talented at broadcasting news, like reading the news, for example, right? So these are actually connected talents, like they are still within the same group. I mean, you could argue that, okay, the skill of an actor is different from the skill of a broadcaster, but it's like more or less in the same group, right? But what if you have two completely different talents? For example, one is a musical talent, you're very good at music, and the other one is writing. So these are talents that do not fit under the same umbrella. You could not fit them under the same career. So that is where you need to decide whether or not you just want to pursue one, let's say just music, or if you want to pursue music and writing. And again, how to pursue multiple careers, how to balance these out, that's another question. So let's go on to the third thing. The third thing that you might want to consider when you're thinking about whether or not you should pursue more than one career, 2 careers or 3 careers, and that is your past parallel activities and achievements. So this is what I mean. Pursuing multiple careers is really, really tough. It's not an easy thing. I mean, you can imagine, right? Even pursuing one career is damn hard. And it's not always easy to make progress, and you can stay stuck in your career for years on end. So how about if you pursue more than one career? Then, I mean, it's logical to say that it's even more difficult, right? You will definitely be faced with a lot of challenges, in particular related to time management. How do you allocate your limited resources, your time, your money, your attention to energy to more than one career, right? That is awfully, awfully hard. So I would say that pursuing multiple careers, more than one career, is only suitable for those of you who are good at that, who are good at managing your resources, whether that's time or energy or attention. Because if you cannot do that at all, and the thought of splitting your time, your resources, your attention makes you dizzy and anxious, then it's really not the right thing for you. And to be able to know whether or not you are this type of person, it's actually quite easy. You can do that by looking at your past activities and achievements. So look back to the time you were in college and in high school, and see whether or not there was a pattern of you pursuing multiple things. So not careers, of course, but in this case, activities. So let's say that in high school you were not only captain of the football team, for example, but you were also actively engaged in debates in school. So this is proof that you are able to manage more than one thing, more than one challenging thing. Or for example, during university, you were doing a really good job, you were doing well with your exams and were able to get good grades. And on top of that, you also contributed to the university's newspaper. So that is also an example of proof that shows that you are capable of allocating your resources and managing your resources. But let's say, for example, that in the past you weren't even good at managing one thing, that you weren't even good at managing your study schedule, then perhaps pursuing multiple careers is not a really good idea for you. But of course, people can change. I mean, the past does not dictate the future. All I'm saying is that your past parallel activities, or the non-existence of those, that might be a strong indicator of whether or not you would be able to manage pursuing more than one career. And all this while, we've been mostly talking about portfolio careers, meaning multiple careers that you pursue at the same time in parallel, which necessitates you to split your resources, right, among these careers. But there's also another way to pursue multiple careers. So if you're not really good at splitting your resources to different things, what you can also do is pursue multiple careers, not at the same time, but one after the other, which is also called sequential multiple careers. So this means, for example, that you pursue a career in software engineering for 10 years or 15 years, and then for the next 10 to 15 years, you pursue a career in drawing cartoons or animation and so on. So that's another way that you can do it. So now let's move on to the fourth thing that you might want to consider when you're thinking about whether or not to start a second career, and that is your need for diversification. So many people, most people I would say, are pretty okay to just have one career. For example, they are a doctor or they are a real estate agent, and they expect to derive their whole income, all of their earnings from that one profession, right? But then there are other people, and I think there are increasingly more of those people who do not just want to rely on one source of income. And in this case, it's active income specifically. I mean, where you work and the service you provide or the product you produce generates an income for you. So there are some people, and I think that includes me as well, who do not just want to rely on one income source, but want to have a bit more diversification. So I guess you know what portfolio diversification is, right? When you invest in stocks, when you invest your money, you don't want to put all of your money, let's say you have $10,000 in one basket and invest in that one stock, but instead you can sort of manage your risk by diversifying your portfolio. So you do not put your $10,000 into one stock, but instead you put $2,000 into 5 different stocks. So if one stock tanks, you still have the other stocks that might have performed better. So it's the same thing with careers. Let's say that you are a real estate agent, but you feel that because of the very, very uncertain economy nowadays, or for the past 2 decades, you're not really sure if you can always rely on income from working as a real estate agent. Or perhaps you can, but you just don't want to. You just feel it's a bit anxiety inducing. So instead of just having and pursuing that one career as real estate agent, you might consider pursuing a second career, for example, as a blogger. You might want to think about blogging about personal finance or productivity tips and so on, and generate a revenue stream from ads there. So by doing this, you have diversified your income streams. You do not only have income from real estate, but also from blogging. So if something happens in the economy and fewer homes are getting sold, which I guess is the case nowadays, right? It applies to these times. Then you do not need to worry, because you also have this blog which can generate income for you. So that is also one thing to consider. And let's talk about the 5th thing, which is personality. And I think that by far this might be the most, not important one, but most interesting one, at least for me. People have very, very different personalities. There are many people, including some friend of mine, who are completely okay just doing the same thing, like working in the same job for the past 20 years. Whereas for me, that is just out of the question. I would really die of boredom and lack of challenge. But there's no right or wrong to this. People are different, right? For some people, that's just okay. That's what they want. They're okay to just stay in one career, pursue one career, or even not pursue a career and just work in a job their entire life until they're 65 and then retire. But for other people, on the other extreme, there are people who just need much more stimulation. They need more variety in their work. And if you are someone like this, then you just won't be able to stand working in one and the same career for your entire life. You would just feel suffocated. And this is something that only people with this kind of personality can understand. And that might be you listening right now. You might be someone who would benefit from doing different kinds of work than pursuing more than one career at the same time. Because in fact, pursuing 2 careers, if you do it right, can balance out each other. For example, I am a content creator, and one of the things I have to do to put up videos is to edit my videos. And I actually love editing videos. It's a lot of fun to me, and I can immerse myself in that for hours. But there's a limit to that. I could not imagine editing 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for my entire life. Like that would just be too much for me. I need more variety than that. So the fact that I'm doing other things, for example, I'm pursuing acting and I'm also writing a book, that gives me the balance that I need. And again, if you are not this type of person, then this might not make sense to you at all. You might think, why in the world would I do several things? I mean, it's tiring and it's exhausting enough just doing this one thing, right? So there's no right or wrong. Again, it really depends on your specific personality if you're really someone who needs that variety, then pursuing a second career might be a really great idea for you. By the way, I would really be curious to hear from you in the comments. Please do let me know what's going through your mind right now. Are you already pursuing multiple careers, or are you pursuing one career and thinking of starting the second one? And also please tell me about what kind of doubts, what kind of challenges you're facing at the moment. I would really love to know. I know from my personal experience that the process of pursuing multiple careers can be very, very lonely, because not everyone will understand what you're doing. Many people will think that it doesn't make sense, or they might support you, but they just don't understand what you're trying to do. So my goal with this podcast, and also my main multiple careers channel, as well as my book, is not just to provide you with information and also tools and techniques to balance multiple careers, but also to give you some motivation, and also maybe just to be a friend on this difficult journey that you're on. So guys, if you're interested to know more about my book, how it's coming along and when it's going to be out, then please make sure that you follow me on my Instagram, which is Multiple Careers, because there I will keep you updated on the latest development. And also, if you are someone who prefers to read content rather than just listening like to this podcast, you can also check out my blog, which is multiplecareers.com, where you can find more material. So guys, after listening to this checklist with these 5 points to consider, do you feel that you have more doubt or perhaps less doubt about pursuing multiple careers? And have you come to a conclusion? Have you made a decision as a result of this? I would really, really love to know. So again, please do let me know in the comments down below. And if after all of this you are still doubtful and you still can't make up your mind and are thinking, should or should I not start another career on top of the one I'm already pursuing, then the best way to figure out is to just go and try it. Because anyways, you can't just suddenly start a career. It takes time until you get that new career rolling. Then instead of hypothesizing, theorizing, why not just go ahead and try it, test it. Try to read about it and try to find out what kind of skills you need for it and how you get into that career. And in that process, you will find out whether or not it's for you. And if it turns out not to be for you, then it's okay. You can just let it go. But you can have the peace knowing that at least you've tried, you've not left any stone unturned. But if it is for you, then you might go ahead and pursue multiple careers, and that can be one of the most fulfilling things that you're going to do in your life. So that was it for today, but I still have a ton of other podcast episodes that might be helpful in the challenges you're facing in your career, so make sure that you check those out. Thank you so much for joining again. I really appreciate that you listened into this podcast and supported this podcast, and I'll see you again in the next episode.